Hi guys, No Mind here. Welcome to the crafting guide. Basically, this guide is geared towards newer players, but even if you're an advanced player, there might be something in this guide that you might not know of. We're gonna go over basically like the basic currencies in pathofExile and what like a normal item is, all the way up to a rare item, unique item. Basically, it's like the bare bones, like kind of like a basic top level overview of every crafting method in pathofExile. We're talking delve, fossils, we're talking essences, we're talking harvest crafting, we're talking just chaos orb spamming, orb transmutations, orb of augmentations, all that. So if you've ever wondered what like a currency item does in pathofExile, chances are I talk about it in this video. But yeah, without further wait, I'm just gonna jump right into it, guys. There are timestamps available in this video, so feel free to just jump around to any section of the video that you might like. Let's say if you're confused about how essence crafting works, just jump to the essence section of the video and hopefully that clears it up for you. Again, this is just like a basic overview, guys, to kind of dip your toes into like the crafting side of pathofExile. Nothing really serious. I might make more advanced crafting guides in the future if this one works out and if people demand it enough. And yeah, guys, that's it. And if this guide has helped you out even a little bit, just consider liking and subscribing for the YouTube algorithm. And without further yapping from me, let's jump right into it. Crafting in pathofExile for beginners. So before we get started with crafting, go to options, go to input, and where it says show advanced item description, make sure you set a hotkey to that. In my case, I use Alt. What this allows you to do, you can hold down Alt over any item and it gives you detailed description on all the modifiers on the item. So in pathofExile, every item has an implicit property which makes it unique. For example, this normal item here, it has an implicit property of fire and lightning resistances. 2 stone rings are unique like this. They have either fire and lightning, or they have, cold and lightning. There's different variations, but you get the gist of it. This leather belt, its implicit property is maximum life. This is a Stygian vice. Its implicit unique property, it has 1 abyssal socket, which you can use an abyssal jewel to put in an abyssal socket, and you get all the benefits of the abyssal jewel in that socket. An item in pathofExile has 4 different rarity types. It could be a normal item, which has no modifiers except for the implicit. It could be a magic item, which has the implicit on it, obviously, and it has a prefix and a suffix modifier that is a magic item colored in blue and everything. This is a rare item. It can have up to 6 explicit modifiers, which is 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. I'm holding down my Alt hotkey. Again, you can see here it has 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. It cannot have any more modifiers. And then there are unique items which have special explicit properties. Every unique item is unique. They do completely different things, but this is still a 2 stone ring, as you can see above in the implicit modifier. Again, it is still a 2 stone ring, but it is a unique item and the explicit modifiers are completely different. We can use a orb of scouring, which removes all modifiers from an item. We can use an orb of scouring to turn a magic or a rare item back into a normal item which has no explicit properties. We cannot do this on rare items because an orb of scouring can only be used on magic or rare items. The beginning process if you have a normal item in pathofExile is to use an orb of transmutation on it. An orb of transmutation upgrades a normal item into a magic item. When you use this item, it can either get 1 or 2 modifiers. In this case, we got a prefix and a suffix. But if you use an orb of transmutation on a normal item, sometimes it only gets 1 modifier. In this case, we got a suffix modifier. You can use an orb of augmentation to augment a magic item with a new random modifier. If you use an orb of augmentation on a magic item, in this case it already has a suffix modifier. The other modifier that an orb of augmentation adds will always be a prefix modifier. And this is true the other way around too. If the item only has a prefix modifier and it's a magic item and you use an orb of augmentation on it, it will add only a suffix modifier every time. You can also use orb of alterations on a magic item, which reforges a magic item with new random modifiers. As you can see here, I'm using an orb of alteration and it's getting new modifiers. Sometimes you'll only end up with 1 modifier. You can use an orb of augmentation to add the other modifier. Again, if it was a suffix, it would add a prefix. If it was a prefix, it would add a suffix. You can have a maximum of 2 modifiers on a magic item. As you can see, if I try to use an orb of augmentation, you cannot add more modifiers. For an item to have more than 2 modifiers, you have to use a regal orb to turn a magic item into a rare item. This will add another random modifier. It could be a prefix or a suffix. Remember, we mentioned earlier that an item can have up to 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. We can use something called an exalted orb to augment a rare item with a new random modifier. Again, you can see here, once we have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes, it will not allow me to add any more modifiers to the item. An orb of alchemy upgrades a normal item into a rare item like this. The number of mods you get is random. Sometimes you'll get all 6 mods. Sometimes you'll get 3 or 4 mods. It really depends. But you'll always get at least 3 mods when you upgrade a normal item into a rare item using an Orb of Alchemy. You can also use a Chaos Orb, which reforges a rare item with a new random modifier, like this. Again, every time you use it, the item will stay rare, but you'll get new modifiers on the item. I don't recommend using Chaos Orbs. You're better off just trading these Chaos Orbs to other people to buy the item that you want instead of randomly trying to get the item you want. However, sometimes it's just fun to gamble. Let's say you have a rare modifier with 6 modifiers total, 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes, and you want to try to maybe get rid of a modifier. You can use something called an Orb of Annulment, which removes a random modifier from an item, like this. As you can see here, a modifier was removed, a prefix was removed, so now we have 2 prefixes and 3 suffixes. We can't have any more suffixes on this item because it already has 3 suffixes, which is the maximum on an item. But as you notice, we did remove the prefix, so now this item has 2 prefixes, which leaves it with something called an open prefix. The reason we say it's an open prefix is because the item currently only has 2 prefix modifiers. Remember I said earlier we can have up to 3 maximum prefix modifiers on an item. So this leaves us with an open prefix. What we can do here is either use an Exalted Orb to slam on a random modifier. It would be a guaranteed prefix. Or we could use something called the Crafting Bench. Crafting Bench allows you to craft a prefix or a suffix modifier of your choosing. Some of these recipes are unlocked by completing the campaign. You'll have like crafting recipe items that you kind of click on during the campaign. If you scroll all the way down to the undiscovered section, you can see the craft as well as the area that it's found in the campaign. Aside from the campaign, another way to unlock recipes is by unveiling them. The way you unveil a modifier is you talk to Jun here and click unveiled items. You put an item with a veiled modifier in here and you just click unveil. You'll have up to 3 options to choose from. Basically, the ones that are with the yellow bar you've already unlocked. And basically the one that has a white bar is the one that you haven't discovered yet. So just click on the ones that you haven't discovered yet and then just click confirm. These modifiers, when you unveil them, are generally stronger versions of the ones you'll unlock in the crafting bench. So we unlocked this modifier, critical strike chance, and critical strike multiplier if you're shattered an enemy recently. So if you go to the crafting bench here and just type in critical strike modifier, and this is the one we unlocked. Again, you can see this rules. The maximum is 16 and 23, but on the item, it is 21 and 29. 21 increased global critical strike chance, and 29% to critical strike multiplier if you shatter an enemy recently. Again, these are less powerful versions, but the upside is you can craft them on any items as long as you have an open prefix or an open suffix, depending on the modifier if it's a prefix or a suffix. Hopefully that makes sense. So again, this item has an open prefix like we discussed earlier. Let's say I want to craft life on it, so I just click the life craft and then I hit craft, and it'll give me a life craft on the item. Let's say I change my mind and I want a different prefix. Click whatever prefix you want, let's say energy shield, and then you can just hit replace. It'll cost you an Orb of Scouring to scour off the last craft and then replace it with the new craft. And also if you want to remove the crafting mod and don't want to craft on anything else, you can type in remove in the search or just scroll down and click remove crafted mod. It'll cost you 1 Orb of Scouring. You click craft and it'll remove the crafted mod. Another crafting currency I want to talk about is an Orb of Chance, which upgrades a normal item into a random rarity. This can turn it into a unique item. In this case, we just got a magic item. You can use an Orb of Chance to chance unique items. There are exceptions to this rule. You can't use an Orb of Chance to chance a unique item that drops from a boss or maybe in certain areas or a vendor recipe. The concepts I've been discussing for the last few minutes can be applied to any item in Path of Exile, whether it be a body armor, rings, jewelry, helmets, weapons, shields, you name it. The only exception to the rule is flasks. Flasks can only be crafted up to magic quality. There are no rare flasks in the game currently as of 3.24 Necropolis League. There are unique flasks in the game that drop from bosses and just killing monsters, and they have their own unique properties and they cannot just be crafted. Now, let's talk about modifiers and their tiers. You'll notice that modifiers have a tier and their tier has a number next to that tier. In Path of Exile, tier 1 is the best modifiers in the game, and as that number increases, the modifiers get worse and worse. To see a complete list of prefixes and suffixes an item can have, as well as the tiers that they can roll, check out our site called craftofexile.com. Basically, you first choose a base group. So in this case, we're working with jewelry, and we're working with ring. And as you can see on the left side, this is all the prefixes a ring can have. And then on the right side is all the suffixes a ring can have. As you can see here, you can click on any modifier here and it'll display all the possible tiers of that modifier, as well as the range that the tier can roll in. So for example, a tier 1 life modifier on a ring can have a range of 70 to 79 to maximum life. and a tier 8 modifier is like the worst one, and it only has a range of 3 to 9 to maximum life. The tier number a modifier can roll is dependent on the item level of an item. For example, if you're looking for tier 1 life modifier on a ring, you want to make sure that the ring item level is at least item level 44. You will not be able to roll a tier 1 life modifier on a ring that is not item level 44 or higher. Again, this is different for each modifier, so check out, like let's say if you're for some reason aiming for max rarity, you want to make sure that the item level of the ring is at least item level 84 to guarantee the tier 1 rarity of items modifier. If it's not item level 84, then you will never hit tier 1 rarity on that item. You'll also notice like these little icons next to the modifiers. This is a great time to talk about catalysts, so let me jump into that. Before we jump into the catalyst section, guys, I just want to talk about fracturing orbs. Fracturing orbs fracture a random modifier on a rare item with at least 4 modifiers, locking it in place. So let me demonstrate that right now. We got the 44 cold resistance. So basically what a fractured modifier is, guys, is it's kind of displayed right there, like in like a different kind of like a light gold kind of color. I'm not sure exactly how to describe that, but basically any type of crafting you do on this item, the fractured modifier will never change. As you can see, I'm spamming a chaos orb on this item and all the other modifiers are changing, but the 44% to cold resistance, which is our fractured modifier, is staying the same. Okay guys, now let's jump into the catalyst section of the video. Hope you enjoy. Catalyst can be obtained from metamorph encounters, generally speaking, as of 3.24. Basically, each catalyst add quality to jewelry such as belt, rings, and amulets to improve certain stats of an item to push them higher than their tier allows them. So for example, if I use a Fertilus catalyst on an item and it has a life roll, that life roll will get better, as you can see here, for each quality. Also, something to note, you notice that the quality was going up by 2% on a magic item. Basically, catalysts, if you use them on a normal item, the quality goes up by 5% to a maximum of 20%. On a magic item, the quality only goes up by 2% up to a maximum of 20%. And on a rare item, the quality goes up by only 1% up to a maximum of 20%. So it's always recommended, if you have an idea of what kind of quality you want on an item before you begin crafting it, you want to quality a normal item up to its maximum quality before you begin any crafting on it. The catalyst quality of an item does not affect the tiers that it can roll. This was once a case a long time ago in pathofExile, but it is no longer the case now. It only improves the existing tier modifiers with the right tags on it. It doesn't guarantee or like increases the chance of you rolling a modifier on that item, if that makes sense. And if you go to pathofExile here, you'll notice like these little icons here. These are catalyst icons, and basically it tells you that this modifier right here can be affected by these catalysts here. Unfortunately, there's no, I can't really hover over the name, but you can kind of match the icons up in game. You know, this is like a fertile catalyst and so on. You can see there are some modifiers in pathofExile that can't be affected by catalysts, such as rarity. There is no catalyst for rarity, and I think there might be a few other niche ones. While we are on the topic of quality, you can also quality your armor and weapon pieces using blacksmith whetstones and armor scraps. For example, the spine bow, adding quality to it will only increase its physical damage. One side note, for qualitating weapons and armor, it also increases the chance of getting the maximum number of sockets and links on that item. So if you're trying to socket and 6-sync your item, you always want to make sure that it's the maximum amount of quality. You can raise the quality of an item above 20%. We will discuss that in the fossil section of this video. And for armor pieces, for example, this boots here, it has a base evasion rating. So qualitying the base will increase its evasion rating. And same here, this is a hybrid base, armor and evasion rating. Again, 20% quality will add to that armor and evasion rating, which I have done here already. You can see the base rating is 117, 117, but qualitying it changes it to the blue number, which is 140 out of 140. And also, there are these really rare item currency items called sacred orbs. These are usually not relevant to your build. If you look at this example here, it says evasion rating 230, and the roll range is 220 to 253. You can use a sacred orb to change that. Also, just a little side note, if your weapon or armor is corrupted, you can use a tainted blacksmith whetstone on a weapon to change the quality up to 29%. In this case, we got 4% and 18%, but it can go all the way up to 29%. Same thing for tainted armor scraps. You can use them on corrupted armor pieces to raise the quality all the way up to 29% also, I believe. Essence is one of my favorite ways to craft in pathofExile. It's very simple and it's very straightforward. Using an essence on an item guarantees a modifier on that item based on what the essence says. So for example, we have a belt here, which is a Stygian Vice. If we look at Screaming Essence of Hatred, if you read the line that begins with belt, it says it guarantees 36 to 41% to cold resistance. So let me use this essence here. And as you can see, we are guaranteed a cold resistance roll, and we get other random rolls too. This is a great way of guaranteeing one mod that you are looking for, and you can usually get the second or third mod, usually if you use enough essences. Keep in mind the essence has to be at least screaming for you to reroll a rare item like this. If the essence tier is a wailing or lore, it will not allow you to reroll a rare item. As you can see, it says target is not normal rarity. So what you have to do in that case is use an overscouring to turn the item into a normal item, and then you can use wailing essences freely. Again, any essence that's wailing or lore tier, you have to turn the item into a normal item first. Feel free to explore these essences. They do unique things based on the base type they're being used on. For example, if I used the Essence of Hatred on a bow, it will add flat cold damage, as you can see. And obviously, there are some essence restrictions. Basically, you can't use essences on jewels, and you can't use essences on flasks. Keep in mind, you can also upgrade a lower tier essence to a higher tier essence. If you have the Essence Stash tab, you can just hit upgrade, and it'll highlight the ones that are able to upgrade. So if I want to upgrade this to the next tier, it'll cost me 3 essences of the lower tier, but it'll give me 1 essence of the higher tier. And if you don't have a premium essence stash tab, do not worry. Just grab 3 of the essences you want to upgrade to a higher tier, go to any vendor, sell the item to the vendor, and you'll get back the essence 1 tier higher. Hi guys, welcome to the influence item section of the video. I'm going to try my best to explain what influence items are and what they do for your items. So basically an influence item can have various influences, as you can see here. You can see like the items are like physically, like they're different in appearance visually. Like this one is like crackling. This one's kind of got like an ice glow around it. This is kind of got like a poisonous glow around it. This is kind of, this kind of has like a fiery kind of glow around it. So let me go over each influence. So these are shaper items right here with the shaper influence. You can tell because the background is kind of like a starry background. That usually is a telltale sign that there is a shaper influence on these items. Same with elder influences. You can see like the tentacles that are kind of in the background, kind of reaching out from the item. This indicates that the item has elder influence on it. This lightning influence that you see here visually, this is crusader influence. This ring right here has warlord influence. You can kind of tell by like the burning background right there around the ring. This is hunter influence. You can tell by like the green poisonous glow around the item. And then finally, this is Redeemer influence. You can tell by like the icy glow around the item. Another way to tell influence really easily is that if you look at the nameplate of the item, in the top left and the top right, you can see kind of like wings, like white wings. This is Redeemer influence. And the same is true also for the other items. There's usually like a symbol by the nameplate that indicates their influence also. So for Hunter influence here, for example, you can see like the symbol is kind of like a green tentacle. You can see on like the top left and the top right there on the nameplate. Same with Shaper, it's kind of like a red star. And then for Elder, it's kind of like a thick plus sign. Now you might be wondering what's so special about influence items. Well, influence items have a special mod pool of prefixes and additional suffixes that they can have based on their influence. So for example, if the item has Shaper influence, these are the additional prefixes that the item can roll. And then these are the additional suffixes the item can roll. And this is true for any additional influence. For example, if the item has Elder influence, it can roll these additional mods as well as like the regular prefixes on the item. For suffixes, it can roll these mods right here on top of the already existing suffixes on the item. As long as the item has the appropriate item influence, you can roll the appropriate mods that you see here on the screen. Just make sure your item base is correct. I'm choosing ring here, but make sure like if you're looking at gloves, helmets, two-handed weapons, body armor, the mod pool can be drastically different. So just make sure you pay attention to that and you should be fine. Influenced items like these, like the Crusader, Hunter, Warlord, and Redeemer influence items can be found in Conqueror maps like, Barn the Crusader. Maps contain Barn Citadel, Veritania maps, Hunter Al-Hazmin maps right here. And then Drox the Warlord maps. These type of items typically drop from maps like these, respectively. So maps that have Elder Guardians will typically tend to drop a lot of Elder influenced items, typically, depending on the item quantity and rarity of the map. And then Shaper influenced items typically drop from the Shaper influenced maps, like the Shaper Guardian maps like Hydra, Phoenix, Minotaur, and so on. So the majority of the players play trade league, so the best way to obtain these items is to just buy the influence you want off the trade website from somebody else using Chaos Orbs or something like that. Some bases can be pretty valuable depending on their influence. So for example, if I want any of these influences here that I discussed, only these influences on this item, there is a respective Exalted Orb for each of these influence. So for example, if I want Redeemer influence on this bow right here, I can use a Redeemer's Exalted Orb. And it will add a Redeemer influence mod, as you can see here, suffix of redemption tier 1, it will give the item the redeemer influence. So then if you re-roll it again using a chaos orb or do any kind of crafting on it, it can roll redeemer mods. I guess I should talk about this. I'll talk about this more in the harvest section, but you can also put an item in here and you can randomize the influence of an item using blue harvest currency. So it's this one, randomize the influence type on an item. So if you're playing solo self-found, this could be pretty useful if you're trying to get a specific influence on a base. So you can just craft it and you can see the influence changes every time we hit the craft button. Just a side note, for the Shaper influence and the Elder influence, there is no exalted orb for these respective influences. You have to use the randomize the influence types harvest recipe in order to hopefully get lucky and get the random influence that you want on the item. And again, this only applies to solo self-found situations. If you're in trade league, just buy the item base with the right influence that you want. Okay, so let's talk about the Orb of Dominance real quick. Basically, Orb of Dominance says removes one influence modifier from an item with at least 2 influence modifiers and upgrades another influence modifier. Upgrading a modifier of the highest tier transforms a modifier into an elevated modifier, and this can only be used on body armor, boots, gloves, and helmet. So you can see I have an influence item here with 2 tier 1 modifiers, and these are both Crusader mods. So you have consecrated ground around you while stationary, and then physical damage from hits taken as lightning damage. It's the top 2 mods. These are both tier 1 Crusader mods. So basically every influence modifier has an elevated tier it can achieve after tier 1, which can only be achieved by using an Orb of Dominance. And again, the criteria for this is you have to have at least 2 influence modifiers on that same item, and make sure they're tier 1 if you're trying to hit for these elevated mods. The elevated mods typically make the tier higher than, it's like an elevated modifier, so it's kind of like the best version of the modifier. So for example, you have consecrated ground while stationary. The elevated mod is you have consecrated ground around you while stationary and the effect lingers for 1 second. That's the elevated tier. And for fizz damage from hits taken as lightning, the elevated tier is just like a higher value, and it actually gives you another benefit which says 7 to 10% of lightning damage taken as recouped as life. So that's kind of cool. So let me just demonstrate this by using an Orb of Dominance. It's either going to get rid of the Concentrated Ground mod or the Fizz as lightning damage mod and upgrade the other to like the elevated tier. So let's see what happens. Okay, so it looks like it got rid of the Fizz as lightning damage modifier, and it upgraded our Consecrated Ground modifier. So it says right here, you have Consecrated Ground around you while stationary, and effects of Consecrated Ground you create linger for 1 second. Also, another item I want to talk about is you can use an Awakener's Orb to destroy an item, applying its influence to another item of the same item class. Basically, the use case for this is that you can use this to transfer an influence modifier to another item with a different influence. Previously, we elevated our Consecrated Ground effect to the elevated tier modifier in just a few seconds ago, and now we're going to transfer that mod onto this Shaper Astral Plate, and this Astral Plate has a shaping modifier, which is a Shaper exclusive modifier, the spell critical strike chance. So first I click this and I'm going to transfer this mod onto this item, this Shaper Astral Plate here. And as you can see here, it preserved the Consecrated Ground effect, and it is still the elevated Crusader mod, and it still has the Shaper modifier, the spell critical strike chance. And yeah, as you can see, it kind of rerolled the item. So again, just remember guys, whenever you're using an Awakener's Orb, whatever 2 items you're combining, make sure each item only has 1 influence modifier, because if you mess around and both items have more than 1 modifier, and when you use an Awakener's Orb, it's going to choose a 1 modifier from each item at random and just combine those. So if you're targeting specific modifiers, make sure those are the only influence modifiers on that item. It's very important. Hi guys, welcome to the Eldritch Implicit Modifier section of the video. In this section, we're going to talk about all the Eldritch Implicit Modifiers that an item can have. First rule of thumb, you can only apply these to a normal item without any existing influence. So items like these that we just discussed in the previous section, in the influence section, they cannot have an Eldritch Implicit Modifier. If you try to apply it, it'll give you an error saying item has an influence. There are 2 flavors of Eldritch Implicit item modifiers. Each item can have 1 Eater of Worlds implicit modifier and also 1 Searing Exarch implicit modifier. They can all exist on the same item at the same time. Let me demonstrate. As you can see here for the Eater of Worlds, we got fire damage leases life, and then we can also apply a Searing Exarch implicit modifier at the same time. And look at that, we got 50% chance to extinguish enemies on hit. As you can see here, you can roll these as much as you want. If you're not happy with the Eater of Worlds, you can just re-roll it if you have the right currency. To roll Eater of World modifiers, you need Eldritch Ichors. They come in 4 different rarities: Lesser, Greater, Grand, and Exceptional. Same thing with Searing Exarch. They come in 4 different rarities. And if you want to roll a Searing Exarch modifier, you use the Eldritch Embers. You can find the complete list of Searing Exarch implicit modifiers and the Eater of World implicit modifiers on the pathofExile website. If you just scroll all the way down in the crafting section, just make sure you select your base and everything like that. If you scroll all the way down, you'll run into the section. Each modifier can have up to 6 different levels. Some only have 4, but then there's like a 5th and a 6th level. So there's 6 levels of strength total to these Eldritch implicit modifiers. So the lowest level is lesser, and then it goes to greater, and then grand, and then exceptional. And you can use these Ichors to, guarantee, like you can use the exceptional Eldritch Ichor to guarantee like the exceptional tier of the modifier. But then above exceptional, there are 2 more tiers called exquisite and perfect. The only way to achieve the last 2 tiers is by using an Orb of Conflict, which unpredictably raises the strength of a Searing Exarch or Eater of Worlds modifier on an item and lowers the strength of another. So for example, as you can see here, I have an exceptional Eater of Worlds implicit modifier and an exceptional Searing Exarch explicit modifier. If I use an Orb of Conflict on it, since these modifiers are the same tiers, it's a 50-50 chance of which modifier it's going to pick to upgrade. So I'm going to use the Orb of Conflict once. As you can see here, it raised the Searing Exarch implicit modifier to the exquisite level, which is above 1 level above exceptional, and lowered the strength of the Eater of Worlds implicit modifier to grand from exceptional. And if we use the Orb of Conflict again, we'll see what happens. It raised the Eater of Worlds implicit modifier to exceptional, and then lowered the Searing Exarch implicit modifier to exceptional. Basically, the bigger the discrepancy in tiers, it has more of a chance of picking the lower tier modifier and raising it up. So basically, it's always trying to equalize. The best chance you have of upgrading a tier of a modifier, the best way to ensure this is to make sure that both of the modifiers are like the same tier, basically. And I used the orb a few more times, and you can see here, we got a perfect Eater of Worlds implicit modifier. Basically, when a pinnacle Atlas boss is in your presence, inflict cold exposure on hit, applying minus 22% to cold resistance. That is a perfect modifier. You can't really go any higher than that. Eldritch implicit modifiers can also be used for crafting purposes, which is pretty cool. You have the following Eldritch currencies here. Eldritch Chaos Orb basically says if the Searing Exarch is dominant, reroll prefixes. And if the Eater of Worlds is dominant, reroll suffix modifiers. Eldritch Orb of Annulment. If the Searing Exarch is dominant, remove a prefix modifier. If the Eater of Worlds is dominant, remove a suffix. And then finally, we have the Eldritch Exalted Orb. If the Searing Exarch is dominant, add a prefix. If the Eater of Worlds is dominant, add a suffix. Simple enough. So we have the following item here we were just messing around with earlier. As you can see here, it has a perfect Eater of Worlds modifier, and it has only a greater Searing Exarch modifier. So this Chaos Orb, for example, says if the Searing Exarch is dominant, reroll prefixes. If the Eater of Worlds is dominant, reroll suffixes. So in this case, Eater of Worlds is dominant. So if we use this Chaos Orb, it should reroll only the suffix modifiers of the item. So if we hold down Alt, you see the suffix modifiers are increase attack speed, gain life per enemy killed, and gain 2 life per enemy hit with attacks. These are all suffix modifiers, and since we're using an Eldritch Chaos Orb, and the Eater of Worlds implicit modifier is the dominant modifier, it's going to reroll all these suffixes on this item if we use the Chaos Orb on it, but it's going to keep the prefix the same, like this. As you can see, we're only rolling the suffix modifiers. The prefix is unchanged in this situation. And again, same thing with Orb of Annulment. If the Eater of Worlds is dominant, remove a suffix. So if we use a Eldritch Annulment Orb, since the Eater of Worlds is dominant with the perfect Eldritch item modifier, we're going to target one of the 3 suffixes, increase attack speed, gain 2 life per enemy hit with attacks, and increase rarity. So this should remove one of those suffix modifiers. And as you can see, the increased attack speed modifier is gone. And then the Eldritch Exalted Orb, if the Eater of Worlds is dominant, add a suffix modifier. And we know this is the case. We haven't really changed the modifier quality yet. So the Eater of Worlds is still dominant. It should add a suffix modifier. In this case, we got Dexterity. Now, let's say, for example, you're messing around with the item. You're happy with the suffixes you have on the item, and you want to aim for better prefixes on the item. So what you want to do is you want to make the Searing Exarch more dominant in order to do that. The easiest way to do that is to basically kill the Eater of Worlds implicit modifier. It's a perfect modifier, but just for the demonstrations of this video, we don't really care about the quality of it. I'm just trying to demonstrate it for crafting purposes. So we're going to take that perfect modifier down to a lesser modifier. So now the Eater of Worlds is the less dominant modifier, and suddenly the Searing Exarch is the more dominant modifier since it's like the highest quality. You can see there it says greater in parentheses. next to the Searing Exarch implicit modifier, and then it says lesser next to the Eater of Worlds implicit modifier. So now we should be able to target prefixes. So now the Searing Exarch is dominant, so we're going to reroll the prefixes of the item. So you see the adds 1 to 5 lightning damage to attacks. That is the only prefix on the item. It shouldn't touch the suffixes on the item. So let's see here. Again, you can see it's just rolling these suffixes of the item. And as you can see, like it can give you up to 3 prefixes if you roll it enough. So let's say we're happy with these prefixes. You know, you can roll as much as you want. It really doesn't matter. Same thing with the Eldritch Annulment Orb, just to kind of demonstrate if the Searing Exarch is dominant, remove a prefix. So we have only 1 prefix here. And since the Searing Exarch is dominant, it should get rid of the increased evasion rating. That's the only prefix modifier. And you can see the prefix modifier is gone. And then using the Eldritch Exalted Orb, if the Searing Exarch is dominant, add a prefix modifier. And it should add a random prefix modifier. And for fun, let's just add 2 more. There we go. And again, if we're not happy with these modifiers, we can always use a Chaos Orb to keep re-rolling the prefix modifier, because we haven't changed the quality of the Eldritch implicit modifiers at all. The Searing Exarch is still dominant, and I'm just hitting the prefixes right now. And again, if I'm trying to target a prefix with an Eldritch Annulment Orb, and as long as the Searing Exarch is dominant, it should target a random prefix. And again, the only prefix we had is now gone. So hopefully that covers the Eldritch implicit modifier section, guys. Let me know if I missed something in the comments. Again, this is a pretty big scope of crafting that I'm trying to go over in this video. So there's bound to be some things that I missed. This is definitely meant to be just a beginner overview. So let me know, leave a comment, subscribe, all that, and let's move on to the next section. Hi guys, welcome to the harvest crafting portion of the video. I'm just going to be going over the basics of harvest crafting. Basically, you have 3 types of currencies that are used in harvest crafting. There is the wild crystallized life force, there is the vivid crystallized life force, and then there's the primal crystallized life force. You also have a very rare currency called the sacred crystallized life force. This only drops from Oshabi, which is like the final boss of harvest, basically. At the top, you'll notice here, there's like these buttons here. If you click on one of these buttons, it'll isolate all the options that use that life force. So basically, if you click this red icon here, the wild crystallized life force, it'll show you all the options that are available for the wild crystallized life force. I typically like to refer this as juice, so like red juice, yellow juice, and then blue juice, right? It's easier that way instead of saying crystallized life force every time. So again, for the red juice, just click on the icon, it'll show you all the crafts. Basically, the cool thing is that it basically can guarantee like a specific type of modifier in an item. It's random for the most part, but let's say if you have like this rare item here and you want a life modifier on it, basically it says reforges a rare item with the random modifiers, including a life modifier. So let's just say if you have like these intelligence-based boots and you hit craft, you can see here it guarantees 1 life modifier, and you can see the life modifier that we got in this case was the 46 to maximum life. It's a tier 5. We can hit this again, and you can see we got a tier 9 modifier, which is like a lower tier 2 maximum life modifier. And again, it rerolls all the other modifiers too. But the important thing is it guarantees a modifier that you're looking for. In this case, we were looking for life. And then there are also like these reforged rare items, like being more likely to receive the same modifier types, and then also like being less likely to receive the same modifier types. These are pretty random and don't really work well. For example, if I just so let's say we have life, defense, elemental, defense modifiers. Let's see if we receive the same type of modifiers. We have life, defense, elemental. Yeah, okay, close enough, you know. But again, it's like very chaotic, very random. So I don't really recommend using these as like your primary crafting sources. I think these options are like the top ones right here, like reforge your item, like with fire, cold, physical, you know, using the yellow juice, or like even like the blue juice, you know, lightning, defense, caster, and critical. This especially early league is a very good way to craft your gear very fast and kind of get up and running for maps and everything. So another very useful harvest craft that you guys can use is basically changing resistance modifiers. So for example, right here, we have a tier 3 lightning resistance modifier, but let's say our build has enough lightning resistance already and we want to change it to something called fire resistance, right? So we can use this harvest craft here, which costs 500 wild crystallized life force. Basically, it's saying that change a modifier that grants lightning resistances into a similar tier modifier that grants fire resistance. So the tier of this modifier, this lightning modifier, is tier 3, and we want to change that to fire resistance. So if we use this craft, You can see here, we got a tier 3 fire resistance modifier. This is extremely useful for when you're re-gearing your character and you, let's say for example, you no longer needed that lightning resistances and you prefer like a fire resistance roll instead of that, in place of that. Again, it keeps all the other modifiers the same on your item and it only changes the target modifier based on the craft that you're in our case. We changed the lightning resistance modifier into a similar tier modifier that grants fire resistance, which is very, very useful. I feel like not a lot of people know about this, and it only costs like 500 juice, depending on like which is like cold or lightning or fire, depending on which way you're swapping and everything like that. Also, another craft I would like to bring to your attention is these types of crafts here. Basically, like change a stack of timeless splinters or a timeless emblem into splinters or emblem of another type. Cost is proportional to a stack size. So basically you can put like splinters in here or like a actual like, breachstone. And then basically you can like kind of gamble a little bit and change it into another type. So let's say for example, look at this. We changed a bad breachstone into a Chayula breachstone, which is worth a lot more money usually. So this can be like a fun way to kind of like gamble for like, for like if you have like existing breachstones or everything like that. And it also works the same way for timeless splinters and timeless emblems. It's exactly the same. Works for, there's like options for oils, fossils, catalysts too. I mean, I'm not going to go over all of them because there's, there's a lot of options here. I'm just kind of pointing them out to you guys. Feel free to explore and have fun with them. There's also these crafts right here, basically enchanted body armor. Quality does not increase its defenses, but basically you gain +1 to maximum mana per 2% of quality. So let's say I have this armor piece that has 20% quality. If I put this here, and basically the quality will not affect the evasion rating anymore. Instead, if I use this craft, it will give me +1 to maximum mana per 2% quality. As you can see here, harvest is like a nice way to like kind of have some endgame crafts to really min-max your gear. And again, on my bow already, you have quality does not increase physical damage, except you gain 1% increase attack speed per 8% quality. Also, as of 3.24, harvest crafting is the best way to gain or synthesize an item with synthesized implicits. So basically this craft right here, it costs 1 sacred crystallized life force. And it says synthesize an item, giving it random synthesized implicits, cannot be used on unique, influenced, synthesized, or fractured items. So there are definitely limitations to this, but if you just have a normal item and you're looking for cool synthesis implicits, you can just hit craft here. And you can see we got +9 to lightning damage, and then minions deal increased damage. There's also crafts here, add a new lightning modifier and remove another. Basically, if you're looking to add like a specific tag, a specific, like, let's say if you really want a life modifier on the item without messing with the other modifiers on the item, you can pay 1 sacred blossom and then 17,500 of the correct life force to basically accomplish whatever you're trying to do. Again, this can be very different, but this can be especially powerful when it comes to crafting and everything like that. You can focus craft some very cool items. And again, if you go to pathofExile, guys, we're using boots and we're using intelligence boots. You can see the tags of all the prefixes and suffix modifiers that item can have. So let's say if we're looking for a life modifier, like this is like, you just pay attention to the tags right here. And combined with harvest, let's say if we're doing like reforge life or something like that, or like, reforge a rare item with random modifiers, including a life modifier. So again, you can look at all the life modifiers that are available on that item. So basically, if you reforge an item and including a life modifier, it's guaranteed to include a modifier that has the life tag with it. So it's guaranteed to include this. It's guaranteed to include like a, like a random tier of this modifier and then random tier of this modifier. And again, if we just demonstrate that one more time, we got prefix to maximum life, which is, this right here, basically. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, you can use this for anything. There's defense. There's like tags to every modifier. Some modifiers don't have tags and you really can't do anything about that. But most modifiers generally have tags. So let's say like elemental modifiers, fire, lightning, you can definitely use these to your advantage and use harvest to like focus craft some items. And then lastly, another fun thing you can do with harvest is divination card gambling. Basically, this option right here, sacrifice up to half a stack of divination cards to receive between 0 and twice that amount of the same card. So basically, we're using the hoarder here, which has a maximum stack size of 12. So basically, it says sacrifice up to half a stack of divination cards to receive between 0 and twice that amount. So basically, we can either double this to have maximum of 12 cards, or it could really be detrimental and we can lose our entire card collection here. So here we go. And as you can see here, we went from 6 cards to 2 cards. And then I hit craft again and it stayed the same. It stayed the same again. And then we went up to 4. We went up to 4. And now I'm out of juice. But you get the idea. And this can be a really fun gamble for like higher value div cards like Mage Blood, Headhunters, things that give you like mirror shards, and you know, you get the idea. And that's it for harvest crafting, guys. There really isn't much to talk about. It's pretty straightforward. Hopefully I cleared everything. If I missed something, just please leave a comment and I'll definitely pin it or something like that to clarify and everything like that. Hey guys, welcome to the fossil crafting section of the video. In this section, I'm going to explain what fossil crafting is and how to kind of go about it. Fossil crafting is similar to harvest crafting. You have to kind of pay attention to the tags of the item. Here, I have a normal item here, but let's kind of explain what these items do here. Basically, you have fossils that do different things. You have fossils that give you more physical modifiers, no chaos modifiers, more defense modifiers, no life modifiers. So as you can see here, the theme is they give you something, but they like disallow something else. Basically, what you do is you put these fossils into resonators. So resonators come in 2 flavors. There are the alchemical resonators, which basically like they upgrade a normal item into a rare item. And you'll also notice that these resonators have slots. So basically like the primitive resonator requires 1 socketed fossil. The potent resonator requires 2 socketed fossils, and a powerful resonator can have up to 3 socketed fossils. So basically, like if you have a lot of Orber Scourings, you can use these resonators over and over, but you just use these to upgrade a normal item into a rare item for the most part. The most commonly used resonators for crafting are these ones right here. They're the chaotic resonators. And again, they have the same, you know, 1 socket, 2 socket resonators, and 3 socket resonators. The chaotic resonator also has an additional tier. It's called the prime chaotic resonator. And as you can see here, it can socket up to 4 fossils, making it a very powerful crafting option. And before we dive into fossil crafting, if you go to pathofExile, in this case, we're going to be using a Stygian Vice to craft. So if we just go to jewelry and then you go to the belt section, these are all the modifiers. Basically, our item doesn't have any kind of weird influence or anything like that, so we can ignore all the other influence for right now. But basically, you have the prefix and the suffix list here, and you can see the tags. So basically, increase elemental damage with attack skills has a tag of attack, damage, and elemental. You know, increase fast recovery life recovery rate has a tag of life. Increase fast mana recovery rate has a tag of mana, and then armor and maximum energy have a tag of defenses, and then, you know, plus like to strength is an attribute tag, obviously, and the chaos resistance is a chaos tag, right? And then fire resistance is a fire tag, and you get the idea, right? So let's say, for example, I want to have a belt with life, mana, and attributes. Okay, so since our item is a normal item, I'm going to be using a powerful alchemical resonator, which upgrades a normal item into a rare item. I'm going to be inserting 3 fossils. The fossils I am choosing are pristine fossil. Basically, chance for more life modifiers, but it blocks defensive modifiers from being rolled on the item. And then you have our lucent fossils, which gives us more mana modifiers, but no speed modifiers. I'm going to use one of those. And then lastly, we want a attribute roll. I'm going to use a fundamental fossil, which gives us more attribute modifiers, but it prevents critical modifiers, which is fine, because if you go back to our pathofExile here, there really isn't any critical modifiers on a belt anyway. So really, this isn't really a detriment to us. So once we insert all 3 fossils into the resonator changes appearance, signifying that it's ready to be used. It says right click this item, then left click on a normal item to apply it, right? So we're going to do exactly that. And as you can see here, we have a mana modifier, which is a mana tag. We got 3 life modifiers, which is the increase flask life recovery flask. We have the attribute modifier, we have a tier 1 attribute strength modifier, and then we got like a regen life modifier, which is also a life modifier. So we got a pretty okay roll here, you know. Keep in mind, guys, using these fossils doesn't guarantee all 3 mods every time. It's still kind of like a RNG issue, as you'll see here. Let me use a chaotic resonator this time, since we turned our item from a normal to a rare item. Since it's a rare item, we have to use a powerful chaotic resonator to re-roll it using fossils. As you can see here, this is kind of looks like an okay item too. We got the mana tag, we got the life tag, and then we got the attribute tag. But what I'm trying to show here is sometimes in some cases, you're not always going to get all 3 mods, even though we're using all 3 fossils. So in this example, we did get a life, and then we did get a attribute modifier, but we are missing a mana modifier, as you can see. But this is a pretty nice belt. I mean, look at that. We got 2 tier 1 resistances. So, you know, if I was playing, if this was like early league, I would definitely use this belt. Because if you notice that, just a little side note, it has an open prefix, so we can have a life modifier on it. And we can use the crafting bench to craft a life modifier on it. And we have a pretty decent belt for, like, you know, league start, essentially. I mean, look at that. That's a nice belt, you know. Another fun craft you can do is a gilded fossil. Basically, this says reforges a rare item would need random modifiers. And basically, item is overvalued by vendors. So you can see here, we got an additional implicit value, which says item sells for much more to vendors. So let's just go to a vendor and see what our item sells for. It doesn't really, it's like a hidden item, but it could be anything, guys. And look at that. Hey, we actually got 3 chaos orbs. So that's kind of cool. I don't know if there's any cases of anybody getting like a mare out of it or anything like that. So fossil crafting also gives you the option to upgrade a quality of an item or armor piece to be greater than 20%. I believe the maximum is 30%. You use this by using perfect fossils, which improves the quality of weapons, body armor, gloves, boots, helmets, shields, and even maps. If you were, you know, that try hard, that's up to you. So let's see right here. Look at that. We got 28% quality. Look, again, we got 29% here. You know, usually 29% is a good enough quality to have on an item. Like, that's perfectly fine. Also, the higher the quality of an item, the easier it is to 6-socket and 6-socket eventually. So, you know, it's recommended that before you begin any kind of crafting project, you want to make sure that you have the highest amount of quality that is achievable. Another thing I want to talk about is fractured fossils. Basically, fractured fossils create a split copy, but it cannot be used on influenced items, enchanted items, fractured items, or synthesized items. So this is just a normal item. So I'm just going to demonstrate it for this video here. And I'm just going to try to make like a elemental attack bow here. I'm going to do it so like we have more attack modifiers. And then I'm going to make it so we have more elemental modifiers. And we'll see what we get right here. And as you can see, when I use the fossil with the mirrored, with the fractured fossil, it gave me another item immediately. So, you know, this is basically the same copy of this item, but now they both have the split tag. I do talk about split items at the beginning of the video, but split items can be, you know, modified just like normal items. They can be like socketed and everything like that. The only thing with split items is that split items cannot be split any further. Once they have the split tag, that's it. They can't be split any further. And I believe that's it for fossil crafting, guys. And basically, again, it's pretty random still, but it does give you the option to make it so you receive more of a certain kind of modifiers, as well as blocking some modifiers. So let's say if you wanted like, you know, an item with like, which you didn't want any like speed modifiers on an item for some reason, you can use like a loosened fossil to have no speed modifiers. And then the loosened fossil gives you, you know, more mana modifiers, but you can also combine that with a shuddering fossil to make it so you can have no mana modifiers either. So again, this fossil gives you no mana modifiers, and this fossil gives you no speed modifiers. So effectively, this is like a good way of like eliminating like a large pool of modifiers from an item. Hopefully that makes sense. And don't be afraid to experiment, guys. You know, it's pretty easy to do on pathofExile, like the emulator that they have and everything like that. And I think that's it for the fossil portion of this guide. And yeah, let's move on. Okay, and welcome to the beast crafting section of the video. Beast crafting can give you random stuff, like there's different sections. Basically, you capture beasts using Einhar. You know, they appear randomly in your maps and throughout the campaign. And they can give you some pretty cool stuff, like, you know, create currency items. They can give you a stack of 10 random currency, which could be divine orbs. I haven't seen any confirmed reports of 10 mare of Calandras, but I'm sure it's possible if you're lucky enough. Create random unique items like, you know, ring, amulet, belt, you know, including like, I think, headhunters and stuff like that, right? Create rare items like talismans, and then create an item like quality, 23% quality corrupted gem, 21 corrupted gem, and a fully 6-socketed, fully linked 6-socketed rare item. And this will just be like a random item. And then, yeah, and then basically what a normal person should use beast crafting for, which can be pretty useful, is basically like basically adding a mod to a life or mana flask. So for example, if you put a flask in here, you have to make sure that the required flask has no existing suffix. So you can use Orb of Alterations and, you know, Orbs of Transmutations to craft a prefix that you want. And then you can beast craft it and add a suffix modifier of your choosing. So for example, a popular suffix modifier on a life flask is grants immunity to bleeding and grants immunity to corrupted blood for some seconds if you're affected by corrupted blood and bleeding. And you can use this beast craft to guarantee that craft on top of the increased recovery rate. So you just click craft and then the beast will basically come out and try to kill you. So just make sure your character is equipped to deal with these beasts. It'll be pretty embarrassing if I die here, actually. And then once you kill all the beasts, you can select the blood altar again, and you can see here we have the craft that we selected, which is grants immunity to corrupted blood and bleeding. And then we can just equip that and we're good to go. There's the same crafts that are available for utility flasks. So basically for utility flasks, you don't even have to like pre-craft it. You can just choose and add, you can choose like a random modifier to add basically. Let's say I want of the deer, like I want like freeze and chill immunity, even though this makes the flask have less duration. Let's just say I want that like super badly. So basically I'm going to choose that craft. And again, we didn't craft this flask pre-hand. So we're just going to add the modifier and then we're going to use an augmentation orb on it. Okay. So ritual is complete. We got the modifier on it. And again, we have a open prefix. Again, a magic item can have a prefix and a suffix. So we're just going to use an orb of augmentation to add our prefix. And in the prefix, we got 70% increased duration. And this flask, when we use it, will grant us immunity to freeze and chill during the effect. But the effect is pretty small. It's only 3.6 seconds. Also, the Beast Crafting has crafts like add a mod to a certain influenced item. So I do have a Hunter Quiver here. So I'm going to add a mod to it and see what we get. Oh, God. Let's try not to die here. Okay. And we can see here, I think I got damage leeched its life as my prefix, unfortunately. But you can do that, you know, if you have influence items. It's kind of like a free exalted orb. You can also do this, basically. Only works on rare items. Add a prefix, remove a random suffix, or add a suffix, remove a random prefix. As long as your item has space for it, you can add a suffix modifier, but then you remove a random prefix. So it's kind of really randomized. Let's talk about imprinting. So Beast Crafting lets you imprint an item. This is used by high-end crafters in pathofExile to create really powerful items. For the purposes of this video, I'm just going to use a basic item with a random prefix and a random suffix. But basically, you can create an imprint of a magic item. So let me show you what that does exactly. And once you've killed the beast and everything, you'll get something called an imprint. Basically, what an imprint does is it restores an imprinted item onto the original item. And it can't be applied to fractured items. So basically, this item is stored in this imprint right now. So what the use case for this is that if I have a magic item here and I want to use a regal orb on it to turn it into a rare item, if I'm looking for like a really nice modifier like life or something like that, and in this case, we hit 14% fire resistance, which is not what I want. So I can actually use an imprint to kind of go back to the previous state of my item. And again, we have both of our mods that we previously had before, and now the item is reset into a magic item. And we can keep doing the imprinting stuff until we hit the regal orb that we want. Keep in mind, imprinting is a very expensive process. The beasts that are required for imprinting can be very pricey. As you can see on the trade website, they're about 160 chaos. Approximately in Trade League currently. If you ever want to sell a beast, Ironheart sells. If you ever want to sell a beast on the trade website, Ironheart sells a bestiary orb, which costs 1 chaos. So you buy the bestiary orb, and then you click view bestiary, and then you click captured beast. And basically, you can search for the beast here, but basically you can store a beast in this item. So just right click it and then left click any beast you want to store. So for example, I've stored this item, and then you can like price check it, and then you can see I can sell beasts like this. Some of the very rare crafts that I talked about, you can definitely like sell beasts required for that craft on the trade website to make a pretty nice amount of money. But that's up to you. You don't have to, you know, if you choose to do that, you know, you can make some nice money. A lot of people, I feel, don't pay attention to the beasts that they have in their menagerie. They could have like literally like a couple of divine orbs or like a few hundred chaos orbs just sitting in your menagerie collecting dust. So yeah, just, you know, make sure you check your menagerie, guys. And that's it for this video, guys. If this video helped you out at all, or if this section helped you out at all, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for the YouTube algorithm. And yeah, thank you so much. And that's it, guys, the basics of pathofExile as far as crafting goes. If this video helped you out at all, make sure to like and subscribe for the YouTube algorithm. Also, go ahead and go over to my Twitch at twitch.tv/nominds, 2 S's at the end, link in the description, and follow my Twitch channel. I do want to stream consistently at some point in my life. I will definitely be getting around to that. We're always doing cool challenges on stream and everything like that. And I love talking to new players and like answering new player related questions. So if you ever have any, just hop by in the stream whenever I'm streaming. Usually it's going to be like 8, 9 p.m. Central Time, hopefully every day. But, you know, sometimes I might take a day or two off. And let me know if I miss something, let me know in the comments. And, you know, I'll hopefully clarify it in the comments. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. No Mind Out. Peace.